around 12 people, taking out people who have only 8 or so. Okay. So good afternoon, guys. So this is the Tuesday EPMO new training introduction. We are talking about the new PMs that have joined PSEG or the old PMs taking like a refresher course to understand a bit more detail about the stage gate process, cost estimations, the risk analysis, what we expect you to do, the status reporting, etc. So we're going to run it in multiple modules. So module 1 is going to be giving an overview of our EPMO, what is the org unit setup and how we want to do and all that. So looking at some of these rules of engagement, we expect you to have the attendance on the roster. So if you have joined by any phone or with any other name, please try to change it to your PSEG, the last name, first name. Please share your questions on the chat so we can answer them at the appropriate time. And also we will compile these and answer these questions at the end of the session or maybe like in a day, depending on the, the response that we need to provide to you, okay? After this training, the agenda is basically that we are going to have an introduction and then we dive a little bit deeper into the stage gate process. We will orient you through the stage gate process, the various steps that are expected out of the stage gate process and how do we categorize and etc. Then we go a little bit into the risk and issue management, cost estimations, record retention, and status reporting and the portfolio health. These are the main sections that we expect a project manager should know while conducting the project through its life cycle. Okay. So anytime when you have any question, please don't hesitate to pop it up on the chat so that we can pick up and answer you quickly so that you don't lose your train of thoughts, neither we have any interruption. This is a mostly interactive session that we want to make it, but also bear with us when we are flowing through the content. We like to continue with that way, okay? So looking at what the EPMO vision is all about and what we want to do. So the leadership had a strategic vision somewhere in the early of last year, 2021, where we wanted to have a strong project excellence, right? So we wanted to deliver the projects not only on scope, on date, and but with the quality that we satisfy the customer's expectations to the best possible extent, and keeping the project under the budget and also delivering it on time. In order to do this, we wanted to go with a strong EPMO organization that will help with the skill sets that are needed to the project teams in order to execute a project smoothly. And also we wanted to provide you the robust toolbox and templates so that you know exactly what template to use at what stage of the life cycle and how to get the reviews done, how to get the approvals done, where to store it, etc. And also this should facilitate backwards to the senior leadership team to give the overall visibility of the portfolio, right? How many projects are we handling and how these projects are doing? What is the interdependency between the projects is impacting and how we are taking care of resources, etc. The methodology we wanted to follow is that you will have a well-structured and well-defined method of playbooks, governances, portfolio management, PHR, etc. Okay, we will go through all these things, but I just want to give you a 40,000 feet view of what we are trying to achieve. So in order to keep all these things flowing into the project teams, we thought a strong EPMO team is required. So an org unit was set up in the Q2 of 2021, and thereby we started bringing in the new resources, schedulers, controllers, project managers, so that can be brought onto the projects. Automation is another one that we are focusing very clearly, that instead of doing on Excel sheets and storing it on the SharePoints, etc., we want to provide as much help as possible through the system. It could be ServiceNow, it could be project tracking system, or it could be any other tool that we want to bring in to help the project managers and the project teams. Okay, next, please. So looking at the methodologies, right? So most probably you are all aware that there are different methodologies in the market that how to execute a project. You have the waterfall methodology, you have agile methodology, some people follow hybrid methodology between the agile and waterfall. So this is where we are trying to come up with a little bit of refined way of doing the methodology, right? So we wanted to see it is done in 4 different stages. So ideate and plan is the first one, where you will be understanding the requirements from the business and then formulating them into a plan, okay? Thereby considering all possible parameters and with the technical know-how that you will have till then. Once the ideation is done, then you go into the executing and planning it, where you will be delivering things, capability developments, training, and the quality, etc. Also, there is a well-structured or well-defined change management process that you have to follow at the end of the release or end of the project in waterfall. After that, the project goes into production, you will be following the manage and control stage, where you will be governing the steps that are required on a day-to-day basis, the data loads or any bug fixation, report generation, then archiving, data retention, etc., etc. Then the last one is monitoring and improving it, where you are going to monitor the life of the project or the product and also see how you can mature it to the next level. Okay, so how can you improve it with enhancements or bringing in new features and functionalities of the tool to the use of the end user, the line of business. So eventually, these are the sectors of the circle that we want to continue or complete during the life cycle of a project. Any questions till now? Okay, moving on to the next slide. So in order to have this, we wanted to have a journey with a solid foundation of how do we do these things in each of these steps, right? So you will be going with prioritization. So you take every step of the way, how to prioritize and what to prioritize and take care of those things. If you look at the right side box, stage gate process, the deliverables, maturity of estimates, guidelines, the schedule management, cost management. So we're going to talk about these things as we go by. But you see that these are the words that are very much in a PMP, right? So in a professional project manager's life, these are all the things that we always do. So what we are going to do here is how different is the SGP, which is a stage gate process, compared to a traditional or a conventional framework to execute a project. Okay, so moving on to the next one. Next slide, Salita. Okay, this is the organization that we have stood up. So Rich Brenton being our senior director for the project services. And there is a director that is going to be there for EPMO. As of now, that is vacant. We have 3 towers. So tower 1 is called the operations tower. Then you have a scheduling tower and the controlling tower. So the operations, as you can see, provides the support in entirety for the EPMO organization in terms of portfolio management, process templates, the governance templates, compliances, training, communication, metrics, and reporting. So as you can see, this is almost like a backbone of the org unit, providing all the support that is needed. Scheduling team headed by Nicole Johnson is going to take care of the scheduling of the projects, right? One of the main important aspects of projects are scheduling, the interdependency between projects and how they are getting tied up and how the resources are loaded onto projects. So we know from the senior leadership team how our resources are being utilized and where more resources are required. In order to plan all these things, the scheduling tower is going to be extremely important. The third is on the cost side, right? How do we control our budgets? What is approved budget we have, how the actuals are coming in, accruals, and then how the dollars need to be moved from year to year. Are we consuming all the dollars? Any variance? How are we forecasting, etc.? That entire tower is going to be under a new manager called manager controlling. Okay. This is the basic structure of the EPMO org one tower. There is a parallel tower which is of a different view, that is the TMO. Ours is the EPMO, the other one is the TMO. Okay, that two head for all the energy cloud related huge projects that are being handled by the TMO tower. Okay, that also rolls into Rich Brenton. Next one. So if you look at the three major roles on a project, or one is a project manager, as you all know, project manager is the captain of the ship. They will be taking the course of starting from the business requirements gathering side all the way to cost estimations, project initiation, going through the status reports, reviews, meetings, whatnot, right? He's, that project manager is the captain of the project. So the team on the project manager will be having is one is a scheduler and the other is the controller, along with the project teams. Okay, the technical team, testers, we're not talking about that. We're talking about from the project EPMO perspective. These are the three main roles that we are focusing on, that we bring in skilled resources and support the various projects with those skilled resources. We expect these resources are skilled enough to pick up the PSEG processes quickly and roll them up into the operations. So as I explained already, the scheduler is responsible for the dates, the schedules, project tasks, the interdependencies, and also to see that if any slippage happens, how to rectify it through the justification document. The controller is mainly responsible for the financials, like the budget preparations, capital assessment on them, then seeing that the actuals are properly flowing in, invoice processing, taking care of the accruals, forecasting, etc. So if you look at it, the project health is based on these three people: scheduler to take care of the dates, controllers to take care of the financials, and the project manager to take care of the entire project operations. So having understood this, let's go a little bit deeper into the modules that we're talking here. But these resources are coming onto the projects with cost, right? They are being deployed to the projects based on the various parameters. It could be a big project or a medium-sized project or a small project, or it could be an annual or routine and blanket projects. But depending on the involvement that is required from a controller and a scheduler, we estimated, this is like for your estimation purposes, if strategic formal gated project, which is like a huge project beyond $15 million, you almost need two resources. Okay, that means you will have a dedicated resources, both schedulers and controllers, that the quantum of the work that is required on these projects is such big that you need those many resources to take care of them. Formal gated projects, which are $5 million to $15 million, need one dedicated scheduler and one controller. Same thing goes slowly downwards when you go into formal gated, between 500,000 to 1 million, 1 million to 5 millions, then between 500,000 to 1 million. As you see, the tower tapers down in terms of the involvement of the scheduler and the controllers. The cost also comes down. So approximately this slide gives you how much you have to consider while you're estimating your costs. Right? Let's say an example is your project is 6 months project and you are a formal gated between $500K to $1 million. So look at the value there, 1,456 per week. So two resources working at 6 hours. So this is per resource. So you have to multiply it by 2, multiply by 4 to get to the monthly cost, correct? And then add it up to the 6 months. That will be your budget towards the scheduler and controller. Okay, that's how you can use these figures for your estimation purposes. And also this could be your monitoring purpose when your controllers and schedulers are charging your project. If you are expecting them to charge like 6 hours a week and suddenly you see they're charging 20 hours, 30 hours, that's an alert. So you can say, hey, my project is between 500 to $1 million and I hardly have, that much of expectation from you. What is the additional involvement from you in terms of doing work for us? So that you can align yourself. But like I said, these are the thumb rules, not the exact figures. Sometimes it depends that the projects may have extra or more involvement in the initial stages than the later stages. So these all are an averaged out figure. Okay. Next one. So we're having understood what is the basis of the EPMO introduction to PSEG, IT, and then what is our vision, the journey we were taking, and the roles that we are bringing in. So just let me look at the chat and see what are the questions they have. Will you be sending the deck? Yep, we can do that. And then Alicia, the deck will be available. Okay, Salita is giving the answer. Good. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, then I will we'll go to the next level, the module, the introducing you to the stage gate process.
Naren, actually, a quick question. This is Chandra here.
Go ahead.
So the way you structured on the schedule and the controller, right? Is that process already ineffective? Like, is the resources already been distributed across all the projects with the volumes?
Yeah.
All right.
If any project is not, so let's say one of your project is not having a scheduler or a controller,
okay,
please let us know. Then we can have a quick discussion. Then we will deploy the resources.
All right. Also, one basic question, actually, just to make sure, the project definition, right? It changes from sometime, organization to organization based on the historical background, right? So at PSNGG, like, how you define a project to begin with, which has to be reported to PMO. Do you go by timeline, like, a 2 weeks of work effort, or you go by certain dollar amount? Any definitions laid out on this process?
No, project definition is in general, like we just follow the same PMP.
Okay.
Any project that is, or anything that is required to conceive, design, develop, test, and deploy to meet the business requirements is a project.
All right, sounds good.
Infrastructure project, it could be application project, it could be deployment of a couple of resources to help the business understand or do something. Anything, as long as we are meeting the business requirements and then executing the tasks that are required, that's considered as a project.
All right. Also, one last question at this time. Are all the projects already like aligned with the EPMO with the existing process, or are there any like projects already taken care from the operational team perspective?
There are different at the life stages of the project, right? Certain projects have started literally 3 years back and are still continuing.
Okay.
Some projects have started just few months back. Some are starting in few months. So it is a rainbow-like thing, right? Multiple colors and multiple flavors of the project.
Okay.
So, but we introduced this in the Q3 of 2021.
Okay.
So any projects that are either in flight by then, we want them to pick up from the stage where they are at that time,
right,
and apply these SGP protocols. If the project has started after Q2 2021, we expect them to follow the SGP process.
Got it. Makes sense. Thanks, Naren.
When you jump into this SGP and you complete this section, then you will understand exactly how a project can be categorized and should be using these SGP related artifacts, the tasks, the gates, and all that. So
got it.
I'll hand over this to now Suresh, one of my team members, to go through. I'll be standing by in case you have any questions or any additional input that I need to provide in the presentation. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Naren, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll walk you through SGP framework, and also, Chandra, some of the questions that you asked, we will touch upon them as we proceed along.
Sure.
So just, giving you a quick overview of SGP, it's a framework for delivering the projects. and it lays out basically the goal of SGP is to make sure that we have a standardized methodology, and it helps us to govern the portfolio of the project. So that is at a very high overarching goal. However, we have projects which are come with different requirements, different size, complexity, and so on and so forth. So the SGP it does give you latitude without compromising on the process rigor that is required for a company of size of PSNG, and which is also a regulated company. So it's a pretty important, and a foundational framework that one should be familiar with in PSNG. Next slide, please. So to all, all the colleagues who have joined new, I would strongly recommend that please, take a printout of this slide and keep it for yourselves. This highlights, or this lays out the, different phases in which the SGP is organized. And as you can see, it starts, and I'm not going to read out everything. It's pretty self-explanatory, but what conceptually the framework does is that it has, broken the software, our life cycle of a project into 7 phases. And at the end of each phase, there is a gate. And that gate is basically a checkpoint at which we review, the activities done in the prior phase. And unless that gate is approved, you don't move to the next phase. That is the philosophy on which we operate. In this slide, you will see that there are 7 phases. And there are 3 dimensions. One is for each phase, what is the core goal that particular phase hopes to achieve? What are the activities that need to be done in that particular phase? And from a financial perspective, what is the, maturity or accuracy expected in that phase for a particular for a project, financials. So these are 3 dimensions, and I recommend that it's a very good and succinct, overview of SGP and activities. Good to it's a good cheat sheet. I'll take a pause. Do you have any questions here? Something that I should deep dive in? If not, we can move to the next slide. Okay, slide. And this is the same SGP. As you can see, the first 3 phases are pretty much like waterfall, no surprises there till the project gets kicked off. Basically, you're going to have the same upstream phases, and it's in the execution phase you're going to see some the agile related adaptations. And of course, once the software is put in deployment, and in post deployment, you're going to have standardized activities. So with just another representation of SGP as required for Agile. Next slide, please. Now, very important that one of the things from a standardization perspective we are doing is that we are encouraging or mandating that all the projects use standardized templates for different deliverables or artifacts that are going to be produced in the project. And those though the templates are stored on EPMO site, and you should always take the templates from the EPMO site. Even if you have done it for your prior projects, but for new, and if you're starting a new project, we all very strongly recommend that you take the fresh set of templates from the EPMO site, because those templates can get updated. Now, there are going to be some confusions for people, especially, we have seen this in past, that we have two set of repositories. One is the source and one is the EPMO site. Our protocol is that any template that you need, you first check on the EPMO site. If you don't find the template, then you look at the source site. But if you have the same template in both the sites, you should always use the template one which is on the EPMO site. So that should be the protocol that takes precedence. We are in the process of rationalizing our, all the aspects, but till that such work is done, this is the protocol that we'll need to follow. Next slide, please. So can you go to the earlier slide? I'll just quickly, So what is from a project management perspective? No, after this. So from project management perspective or project manager perspective, you're focused on deliverables. What are the deliverables you need to produce? And those deliverables are going to be function of what SDLC you're going to choose and how your project is categorized. Okay, so keep that in mind. And and I'll just quickly explain this in the subsequent slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so what SDLC that you should choose? Of course, there, intuitively we can figure out waterfall versus agile versus iterative. But we have laid out certain guidelines or, a guidance in terms of choosing the right SDLC, depending on the different project attributes or project, characteristics. So, and you can read it and you can, it's pretty intuitive. So we'll not spend time here right now. Next slide, please. Okay. Now this, a project categorization matrix is a pretty important, tool. This basically places your project in a governance category, or rather how it should be governed and what templates and what deliverables should it produce. And it is, if I have to put it in a very simplest terms, higher the risk of the project, more governance it should require, or more expensive or more the budget of a project, it should be governed all the more. So the project profile drives, how much documentation, what deliverables, what templates need to be used, and so on and so forth. So we have categorized projects into 5 buckets: formal gated, informal gated, you can then miscellaneous efforts and things like that. And they are evaluated on dimensions like what is the value of the project, what is the risk of the project, what is the size of the project, complexity of the project, and things like that. Now, how do you categorize a project? Although this is a very good and very well defined, you know, guidance uh, table, it is an art and a science. The science part is pretty much here that you have all the parameters given, but then there is an art part where you have to evaluate how risky the project is. And based on that, you need to, apply the right category to the project. As an example, if your project is just buying desktop systems worth $3 million, that may be a pretty routine effort, and it is not such a high risk, kind of initiative. So although the value of the project is very high, but the risk profile and the complexity and all of the attributes may be low. On the other hand, if you're doing some very, complex database migration or cloud migration or application rationalization or something like that, and although the budget may be probably $200,000, but the complexity may be high, and it may require a different level of treatment or governance, and it could be treated in a different category. So it is recommended that the project manager uses a judgment skill to apply the right, to categorize the project appropriately. Next slide, please. So now while it is mandated that you follow SGP, but you can, as I in the beginning of my while starting the training, we said that there will be certain latitude in terms of selecting the right methodology, right deliverables for the project, depending on the project requirements. So SGP is a framework. It's not everything is not cast in stone. There is it's a guidance, but if you are selecting or if you are dropping some artifacts or certain deliverables, then you need to justify, or there has to be a good business reason why you are not going to be using or complying with SGP, and those need to be articulated and approved. That is a rule of engagement. So and we'll talk about that in the next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is nothing but SGP for different SDLCs like waterfall, iterative, agile, how you can tailor SGP. Next slide, please. So here is, for different projects and for waterfall, for example, for waterfall and iterative as a SDLC category, and a different categorization of projects depending on their risk profile and deliverables, we have identified what are mandatory deliverables and what are optional. As you can see, as you go from formal gated to annual routine effort, the mandatory deliverables become less and less, and and there are more optional deliverables. While 500K and above projects with formal gated category, there is not much latitude expected. So that's a philosophy. And if even within this, if we need, certain things to be changed, then we need that you take approval from the project sponsor or the director for making any changes to the methodology. Next slide, please. I mean, it's the same matrix only for agile. So for three different agencies, what are the deliverables required based on the project complexity? Chandra, you had asked a question, what is project, and so these will also kind of give you an indicative that if it's a small effort, then the way it is dealt with, I mean, it's an indirect answer that it is dealt with differently. But if it's a serious, large enough initiative, then it's dealt with differently. Okay, next slide, please. Now, so this is how we monitor your SGP being put in action. And for every project, you are going to have what is known as stage gate scorecard. And the scorecard lays out all the phases of the SGP and all the checklist or deliverables that are expected at phase in that particular phase. And it is expected that as a PM, once you are done with one phase, once you complete the phase, you submit the scorecard to EPMO. We will be, jointly reviewing if all the deliverables that are expected for the project for that particular phase, whether they are, done, and if there are any exceptions, whether you have the required permissions for those exceptions. And once you get a go ahead, then you can proceed to the next phase of your project. So that's a protocol that we are institutionalizing within EPMO and then PSNG IT. So just giving you a heads up if it's not being for people who are not doing it already. And the scorecard is going to be your record of compliance, whether you are complying with SGP requirement or you're non-compliant. So it's a very important piece of document that you should be paying attention to, in your project execution life cycle. Next slide, please. So basically, when you start the project, get your SGP scorecard, and as I just explained, once your particular phase of a project is done, you send the scorecard to IT PMO, and will review it offline, or we'll do a joint review and make sure that all the deliverables or artifacts they are done properly as per SGP requirements. and will give you go ahead for the next phase. So that and you can take your next steps. So please, this is going to be monitored very, very stringently. So please pay special attention to this as a heads up. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is, yeah, you can go to the next slide. So this shows the scorecard, and as you can see in the scorecard, it's, at a summary level, what you're going to see is that for every phase, how many requirements are there? Like, for example, for create concept phase, there are 13 requirements, and that need to be done before you say that you have successfully, finished your create concept phase. And how many were approved, how many were not approved. So this, this will be the record, and the expectation is that your scoring should be 100%. So that is the expectation. And if certain things are not required, then as I have been telling, you need to get a exception approval for the exception. Next slide.
Suresh, quick question on this approval, right? So for every gate, like for example, having a concept and would like to have this approved or probably reviewed, right? So who's that project governance board, or what is the cadence like, say, layout actually? How frequently you guys meet so that we propose those?
Okay, now you just send it to IT EPMO shared mailbox. So that is the first step.
Okay.
Number two, somebody from IT EPMO will get in touch with you, or they will review offline, and if there are any questions, they'll get in touch with you or straightway give you a yes, no, or ask some clarifying questions in an email. Typical turnaround time can be 2 to 3 days, not more than that. I mean, it doesn't, the whole process doesn't take time. And it can be pretty quick.
Going on. There is a crazy thing that is really eating off my brain. When I was on vacation in December.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Naren, if you're, I don't know who's talking. Okay. So,
yeah. Also, Suresh, actually, from the approval board perspective, right? Will it be only IT PMO, or will there be any business stakeholders and also the technology leadership also involved in reviewing some of these business impacting projects?
Good question. So let me answer this. The goal of IT PMO is just to ensure compliance.
Right.
Now, quality of the deliverable is not within the scope of IT PMO, because obviously, we are not equipped to understand every nuance of 200-300 projects that we have to look at. But what we can look at is that whether the project, if it's a formal gated project and it required 20 deliverables or 20, artifacts were required in particular phase, and whether the project manager or the project team, they have, submitted 20 or they have done 18. So if they have done 18, why not? Which 2 are missing? Why are they missing? Who has approved them? So it's more looking at from a compliance perspective. We also sometimes will look at, whether of the 18 that are there, well, have you given enough information, or are they, is the data or the information in those artifacts just very shallow in nature? So that kind of review at best can be done, but we'll not get into the qualitative part of it. We'll just look from a compliance perspective.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, or?
Not exactly. So I mean, one of my question is basically, for example, you're going for like $1 million plus project where you have a business impact. So the ITPMO is going to facilitate in having all the prerequisites like procured and basically have the approval done through some governance board, or ITPMO itself is the approval board for the gate?
No. Will not see getting the approval from business or security team or for other stakeholders. We can at best facilitate if there is, but again, you will be adding one more stakeholder in the chain. So the idea is that you will be working with the business or other stakeholders, and if there are things that are being held up and you need some facilitation, we will intervene only then, but not as a matter of practice. It is not feasible, or it is not, really, for lack of better word.
Got it. So in this case, who would be driving that conversation, Suresh? Like, will there be a PM assigned from the concept itself, or this is up to the person from the technology team who has an idea or has an upgrade project coming up, right? They drive the conversation, and at what point of time the PM is assigned?
See, I recommend you need to, unfortunately, this training is a very, small abridged version.
Oh yeah, no worries. Actually, we can cover it up offline. Actually,
so, but if you go through the SGP at the project initiation phase, project, all the PM and the team assignment happens at the project initiation phase.
Got it.
Okay.
Sanjay, did that answer your question? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, much appreciated.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions, anyone? Okay. I think the next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, these are basically the snapshots or screenshots of how the scorecard looks like for different phases. These are just tabs in the Excel sheet, pretty self-explanatory. And from an EPMO standpoint, we just mark it approved, not approved, and based on the marking, the summary tab gets updated, and your project compliance gets updated accordingly. So that is the workflow. All right, next slide. Yeah, just another tabs. Okay, so that ends my section. Any questions, anyone? Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and your patience.
Okay, just before we go on to the next module, right, the risk issue or decision making. So let me recap what we discussed in the SGP, right? So basically, this is a framework that we expect every project to follow depending on the project categorization. Okay, so the step one is to identify the parameters against which you evaluate your project and put it in the right slot. Right. Now you can see those parameters, or either it could be financials, risk analysis, or the risk profile, the importance of it, or the size of the project, etc. So looking at these parameters, you can decide whether your project is going to be a formally gated project or an informal gated project, a blanket, a routine, or a miscellaneous project. After you categorize it, then you have to decide on the methodology. Okay. Either you want to follow waterfall or agile or iterative. We used to have a mandation previously that we follow agile methodology, but recently we started changing our approach that it should be more between the project team and the business to decide what is the apt methodology. Okay, so as project manager, discuss with your group product manager and your business team and say that, hey, looking at your requirements, I feel that it is more suitable to go agile way because I can deliver you small chunks of value adds. Then you can feel it, then you can refine the next one, refine it like that. So that could be one approach. So the methodologies are open. You can go for a waterfall, agile, or iterative methodology. After you decide the methodology, then you have to come and find out what are all the deliverables according to the SGP, okay, under each of the stages. So look at the table that was provided to you. Look at the project categorization and the gate you are, the stage you are in. Look at the deliverables and start preparing or execute those things. As you complete that particular stage, you are reaching the gate. You should be able to pass the gate by providing the scorecard, right? So you prepare the scorecard, do the workflow like you send it to EPMO time, PMO mailbox, get the reviews done, get the approvals, move to the next stage. So it flows like a smooth way once you start understanding the different pieces of this SGP. If you start somewhere and start trying to jump through the things, then it will be very confusing. So I just wanted to bring that clarity over here. So the slides as well as the process is well set to go into a slide process. But my suggestion to you is to focus on the deliverables. They are not only from the perspective of project management for IT, they are also a lot of swim lanes coming from the external to IT, right? Like for example, security team, there is an integration team. There's going to be another one from the disaster recovery. So these teams are putting their requirements into SGP. So at each of these stages, you have to understand what are the requirements from these teams in order to comply with, so that you can move from stage to stage. Okay. Don't try to think that, okay, I'm adopting all these things as far as the project management process team is concerned, but I completely ignore the security team. Nope, that's not going to happen, because down the line on the third phase, if they find that you have not complied with their reviews, then most probably the project may enter into red state. So don't do that one. Look at the deliverables, every deliverable. If you are having full clarity, move on. If not, then reach us to the EPMO team. We will be able to guide you. Okay. So with that as a note for you, so that you can comply with the SGP. Okay, let's go to the next module. Any questions, any further details you need, you can always reach us. Okay. Okay, Salita,
Great,
all yours. Go ahead.
Great, thank you, Naren. We'll move right into risk issue and decision management. And while likely all of you are familiar with risk management, we'll talk about risk management here at PSEG. So it's designed to improve service delivery. It's aligned to best practices. And I particularly want to note that the use of risk and issue registers will be supported by regular workshops, meaning that you meet frequently with your team to identify and evaluate your risks. So here are our types: risks, issues, decisions, and change requests. I'm sure that we're each familiar with what these types are, but there is a description, and we'll move through this pretty quickly to kind of catch us up on time, and because likely most project managers are familiar with risk management. But a risk is something that definitely could happen. An issue is an event that is happening. A decision is a decision that needs to be made to continue progress with the project. And a change request is submitted if a decision has been made that impacts the project and affects the timeline, scope, etc. So by now you're familiar with our stage gate process and this image, but this image depicts the application of risk management in the stage gate process. So at the create concept phase, you'll want to conduct a qualitative risk assessment and identify your risks at a high level. As you move into the develop business case phase, that's where you want to finalize that risk assessment and prepare to incorporate it into the business case, which you'll submit for executive review and approval. As you move into the project initiation phase, you'll refine your risk assessment and you'll identify your change plan owner. As you move into the initial design, you'll complete a quantitative risk assessment. And shortly, we'll talk about the difference between your qualitative risk assessment versus your quantitative risk assessment. As you move into your full-blown design phase, you'll update your risks and issues, but now you'll update your contingency estimates. You'll move into your direct and manage phase. You'll update your risk register. Again, you'll document your lessons learned, and you'll obtain change control board approval for you to implement your solution or your initiative. And then as you move into post-deployment, again, we'll talk later on about closing project risks and issues. Again, as my counterparts have mentioned, you have the opportunity to present this in the waterfall methodology versus the agile. And then again, you see the stage gate process and how risk management is applied within this stage gate process as well for agile. So here are our risk management stages. You start with risk identification, which we just talked about a moment ago. You identify your risk and how it could impact your project, the probability that that event would occur, and any potential responses. You move into risk analysis, where you assess the impact or probability of a risk. You move into risk response planning, where you develop your options and determine which actions are appropriate to enhance opportunity or reduce threats. Then you move into risk monitoring control, where you constantly monitor your risk. You reassess those risks or issues for probability and impact. You identify any new risks that develop during the project life cycle, and then you manage the execution of those risk responses if a risk materializes. And then the final stage is risk closure. And pardon the typo there, we'll talk about the difference between closing a risk versus closing a risk that has become an issue. So first, let's talk about risk identification. This is the process by which a potential risk is initially recorded and communicated. And it's important to identify your risks and communicate them in a timely manner so that you can mitigate, avoid, or resolve risk. You'll see a hyperlink here for a type of cheat sheet on SharePoint, so that you can use this as a reference to prepare for your risk ID sessions. So let's talk about the first type of risk analysis or risk assessment, and that is qualitative. Qualitative could be somewhat subjective, but this is where you initially identify and document your risk. And when you do so, you look at the probability of a risk occurrence, and that's the assessment of the percentage of a probability of the risk occurring. So that's just saying, what's the probability in percentage that a risk event would occur during the life cycle of this initiative. So when you consider assigning probability, you consider external factors, the statuses, you consider any change requirements, and you consider your organizational capabilities. So what you do is, I like to read this from this column backwards. If I determine that this risk event is more likely to occur than not in my project schedule, and I can rank that probability in this percentage. So there's a 65% probability that this risk event could occur during my project schedule, then that probability is highly likely, and it's rated on a scale of a number 4. We do the same thing with impact. In estimating the scale of the impact of the risk, you use the following scale. Will you consider these factors? Impact on schedule, impact on scope, or impact on cost? And we do much the same thing. If you determine that the impact of this risk event would create a significant disruption to the successful delivery of your project, and you say, it could impact my budget, let's say 8%. You calculate that there's an 8% impact to your budget. It impacts the schedule between 20 and 30 days. That's rated as a high impact, and the scale is a number 4. And let me call your attention to this little note at the bottom. Impact is to key milestone within the project work breakdown structure. So you're not looking at every task, but you're evaluating impact to key milestones. Let me pause here. Do we have any questions so far about this qualitative risk analysis? Okay, great. Then we will move forward. So now that we've looked at that risk analysis, let's look at our risk assessment steps. So the first note I'll make is in calculating your risk index. And calculating your risk index is a sum of your probability times impact equals your risk index. So let's say you've evaluated a risk and you've determined that it has a highly likely probability that that risk event will occur. You look at impact and you say, well, it's highly likely, it's probably going to have a low impact even if that risk event occurs. So you take the highly likely, 4 times 2, and you get a medium risk index. And that's how you apply that to your probability impact rate matrix. You've determined that a specific risk event, you rate it as a 3. It's likely that that risk event will occur, but you determine that if it does occur, there is a high impact. And you see you've rated it a 4 here. So 3 times 4 gives you a 12. So that risk is rated as high. So let's talk about risk and issue management and specifically waterfall methodology. And I won't go through this ServiceNow specifically because when Ayushi presents her module a little later on, she'll actually be demoing within ServiceNow. But you can reference this slide in the future or use this slide as a reference in the future. So I'll mention that the project team will start conducting this qualitative risk assessment at the very beginning of their initiative, and then you'll manage it throughout the project lifecycle. This slide depicts how you can locate and manage your risk register in ServiceNow. So in this slide again, Ayushi will be pointing this out in her deck, but I will call your attention to this graphic here, the frequency at which you should update your risk issue and decision register. If you've identified that a risk is critical, you should be providing daily updates, providing a status, and providing any progress. Versus if you decide that a risk event is low, you'll just monitor it once a week to ensure that the status is still accurate. This is your risk issue and register, and this slide just provides the fields that must be updated and completed in your risk or issue register. And this slide is a continuation of the fields that must be updated with the following information, with the information captured in the slide. So now you're in your project initiation. So at this point, your project has been approved. You have a project number, your funding has been approved. So now it's time to conduct an in-depth quantitative analysis. And the quantitative analysis is during which you will apply your numerical combined effect of the impact on mitigation plans and any investment or associated costs. So that's the point of providing the quantitative analysis. You're actually putting numbers to the risk. And that is important because those numbers feed into your project cost, your project contingency, and your project budgeting. So that's why it's important to provide the quantitative analysis associated with your risks. And here is a cost quantitative risk assessment. To perform this analysis, you must identify and populate the following for each individual risk in your risk register. Otherwise, you will not be able to produce your quantitative risk assessment. So now you have identified your risk, you have conducted a qualitative risk assessment, you are in later phases, and you've conducted a quantitative risk assessment. So now let's talk about risk response planning. This is the process of developing and elaborating a plan if your risk should materialize. It also gives you some ideas of the symptoms so that you're able to detect if your risk has indeed materialized. So here are some mitigation strategies. Number one, you could choose avoidance. You determine that the threat is no longer a threat, or it no longer has the ability to impact the project, or the probability of occurrence is now zero. So that is your first strategy. Your second strategy may be an option to transfer that risk by shifting the threat to a third party. When you do so, you also shift the ownership of the response, and that needs to be captured in your risk response plan. Your next strategy may be to minimize or mitigate the risk. This action is planned to either reduce the probability of the risk occurrence or reduce the impact of the risk event should it occur. And then your final mitigation strategy, you may simply choose to accept the risk. And this is where you take no action, but you continuously monitor the risk to ensure that it remains tolerable, or that the risk, your risk identification or your risk analysis doesn't change related to that risk. And then finally, at the end of your project, you have deployed it, you're ready to close your risk. So this is where you should be going through your risk register and determining, number one, that every risk that has been identified has been closed and how it's being closed. And you accomplish this by obtaining project manager approval and concurrence that the risk has been mitigated successfully. You also want to take the time to conduct lessons learned discussions so that if you have a like experience, you can leverage that knowledge. So what about closing a risk that has become an issue? As soon as a risk is triggered, meaning that risk is realized, it becomes an issue. The risk owner assigned to manage the risk must update the RID register and is responsible for closing that risk in the risk register. And that is what we have for risk management. So here are some RID management guidelines, and I won't read through these, but I'll call your attention to these. You'll have a copy of this deck, and you'll be able to reference these guidelines as needed. So with that being said, do we have any questions about risk management? I see a couple of questions in the chat. One is, can we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, the presentation in its entirety will be available on SharePoint after the meeting. So yes, that will be available. are there any tools available for Agile, such as Jira? I'll have to turn that one over to Naren. Naren, do you know if we have any specific available for Agile?
Got it. Yeah, let me explain that. So we don't have Jira here, but we use ServiceNow, right? The ServiceNow is fully configured to handle Agile projects with reference to releases, epics, themes, sprints, tasks, and then your test management plans, etc. So if you go through the ServiceNow module, then you will understand how to enter or handle the project in an Agile methodology. We don't have Jira, right? So any further help you need, you can always reach out to us. We will point you to the particular or a specific training on the source. Then you can read through it. Got it?
So what sounds like the answer to that question is that the tool we use to manage Agile projects is in fact Jira, and there are reference documents available. If you have any questions,
no, ServiceNow.
I'm sorry, ServiceNow. Thank you, Naren. But if you have any questions, Warren, don't hesitate to send your questions or your comments to the IT EPMO mailbox, and we can facilitate as best as possible. If we have no further questions, Naren, I will turn it over to you and Anthony for the IT cost estimator portion.
Yeah, got it. Good. Okay, so I think, guys, you're understanding step by step how we are helping you guys out. So this is the estimation part of it. As you know, mostly one of the very important points that a project manager need to estimate and communicate that with the business team and get their concurrence to proceed, right? You may have great ideas, but if you don't have money to execute it, it's as good as dead. So cost estimation is one of the tools that we want to introduce you in the next 15 minutes or so. And Anthony, one of my team members, will be taking you through this. I'll pitch in at a later point of the time to explain a little bit more on that one. Anthony, you can continue.
Great. Thank you, Naren, and welcome. And thanks for all that you all on the call do here for this. So again, as we talked about, cost estimation is certainly a critical part, particularly in the larger, more formal gated projects. But quite simply, it's about understanding the cost, coming up with a rough order of magnitude, using the tool here that allows us to look at the resources, pricing the resources, and come up with a rough order of magnitude so that we have estimates for a project to provide to our senior management, our stakeholders, the decision makers, on it, giving an idea of a rough idea of what the project is going to cost, as well as to perhaps identify alternative options or issues. Next slide, please. And quite simply, it's certainly critical, particularly when we have two types of projects, whether they're formal gated or informal gated. We would both use the cost estimator. Clearly, we're going to talk more about today the formal, where the emphasis is on these large projects, where where the subject matter experts, the sponsors, the managers go through this initial project phase, even before they create concept, the first stage of this sales gate process, stage gate process, where the rough order of magnitude estimate is the kind of like a first cut at the cost of the project, particularly when there's a large life cycle on the project, which may in many cases be more than 1 year, to give us a general sense of what the cost is going to be prior to going forward with the approval process. And certainly on SharePoint, we have a nice model there that walks us through the process. We also have, as people have talked about, you could certainly reach out to the EPMO team through our mailbox, any assistance on the template that needs to be used. But again, in a nutshell, the cost estimate is for projects that are large projects in the sales gate process. And there's a rigorous process that goes through the template for those of us who've already used it, going through the resources and the pricing and the hours and the prices for various, whether it's capital expenses or O&M expenses, to come up with some really good estimates that are, not just back of the envelope kind of this is what I think this is going to cost. So we have a nice process there that allows us to go through the project and going through the steps in the cost estimation process to come up with pretty much a baseline cost of what the project's going to cost us, as well as the tabs in the file with instructions on what to enter and assumptions on, either the hours or the number of people or resources needed, so that again, we're trying to focus and hone in on large projects to give us as much documentation and much detail to enable us to come up with good numbers for senior management. And as I've said, also, that tool is there, the ability to work and to reach out to the EPMO mailbox or any of us on the EPMO team to work with you to help you with this process. I'm going to turn it over to Naren right now to have him go through a little bit more detail. Naren? Hello. And again, so Naren, are you there?
So, Anthony,
Okay,
perhaps
yeah,
you could speak to the cost aspect within the stage gate process and how the cost estimation is applied within each phase.
Yeah. So again, as I was talking about earlier, just again, begins even prior to the create concept phase, the initial phase of stage gate, and then again, as we go through to once it's developed, to review and modify the cost with some feedback as the process goes through approval and initiation, and then as the project perhaps may change in scope or may need change requests or modifications to understand as the project initially comes out, but what if anything could change, and just again to use it as also as a forecasting tool as you go through the stages of the process of the project towards its completion, so that again you have the opportunity to have a tool and resources that are consistent, that management understand and has signed off on to. This is how we're going to evaluate and understand the scope of the project, as well as any risk or opportunity as a project goes through its stages, and whether more or less resources and the costs associated them are needed as the project goes towards completion. That's really all I was going to cover at this point. I don't know where Naren went. So again, so that was all I was going to handle with this. So if Naren is not here, then we're just going to move on to the next part of this process.
Great,
Yeah,
thank
basically,
you.
Just to elaborate on what Sarita was alluding to, that as we move along the phase gates from create concept to downstream phases, you definitely as a project manager, we have more information about the project and the scope and what kind of people are going to be required, and all the dependencies and licenses and so on and so forth. So the idea is that the refinement has to be done to the cost, and then you really need to lock the budget. I think it's initiation phase, or when you start the project, your budget should pretty much be locked, and any changes then they need to go through a completely a parallel or a different process, which will be involve justifying the changes, justifying why you need more budget, and going for additional funding approval and so on and so forth. So it is really, expected that you think through all the possible categories of expenses, dependencies, and so on and so forth to refine the budget and come to a number. There is a latitude, when we go through the phase. Nobody is expecting first couple of phases to be perfect, but as you go down, as you start the project, it becomes difficult to make changes to the project budget. So that is that's an element that need to be aware of. And yeah, that's pretty much what I can add more on this particular topic.
Great, thank you, Naresh. I'm sorry, Suresh. I think that summary gives a great insight as to why this cost estimation tool can be so critical as you bring your initiative.
Hi, Salita. Is there anything that, sorry, I was on a called out actually.
Sure, Naren. We're just giving a summary and emphasizing the importance of leveraging the cost
Salita, can you hear me?
estimation tool. Yes, Naren, I can hear you. I can hear you, Naren. Okay, I think Naren may have dropped. So again, the importance of leveraging that cost estimation tool to get a really solid budget as you move forward with your business case for executive review and approval. That's going to be critical. As Suresh pointed out, changes to budget require a justification document. So that's why it's critical to get leverage that cost estimation tool to get a solid starting budget. Naren, I see you back.
Sorry, no, I was called out for another meeting. Okay, but okay, so
No problem.
Any specific question from anybody that we need to address here, or just wanted me to recap what is cost estimation?
Actually, Naren, were you planning to demo the cost estimation tool at this point?
I thought Anthony was going through it. Didn't he do it?
No, I was
no,
going to
he
leave
did
you
not.
to do the Excel. Yeah.
Okay, so let me then, can you share my screen? Can you give me the...
Sure, let me stop.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing.
Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen, Naren.
Okay. So the cost estimator tool, I think you got introduced from Anthony that, we have two types of tools. One is a very exclusive, exhaustive tool for formal gated projects, and a lighter version of it for the informal gated projects. By now you are familiar what is formal gated and what is informal gated, and how we use the categorization in order to identify where you fit in. So this is the source where we have our templates. Like Suresh mentioned earlier, that there are two sources we have. One is the SharePoint site and the other is the source project templates. You see the title over here. So these cost estimator tools are provided here. You can see there is a cost estimator formal gated, and there is one more down below, which is called the cost estimator informal gated. Okay. So the cost estimator informal gated is a very simple vanilla version where you have to just have a couple of tabs. You just input the data based on the parameters or the factors that like how much labor cost, how much outside services, material, the licenses that you have to buy, etc., then you automatically, the system will consolidate the cost into a project estimated cost. Okay. So there are no big complex factors that are built into it, like weighted average, weighted, the risk per weighted things, or risk calculated, risk modified. So there are no such parameters in this cost estimator informal gated model. Okay. So this you can do anytime. You can just go through it. It is very easy to navigate and do it. But just like it is for informal gated and miscellaneous projects. Okay. But as we move towards the spectrum, towards the formal gated projects, where we want to be a lot more diligent about what we do, so you may have to start using the cost estimator formal gated project. Okay, so you go to this comment, this downloads you into an Excel format. So I'm opening the Excel sheet. You can see my Excel tool.
Yes, we can see it, Naren.
Okay, so this is a very self-explanatory type of a tool, or an Excel file, which has multiple tabs. As you can see, I'll navigate them quickly so that you have the other sections to cover. So you start reading this from the different tabs. The first tab being the working guidelines. So you can see it is a lot of explanation. What is the purpose of it, and what are the instructions that in order to flow from one tab to the other. Okay. So then you have the instructions tab. That means each of these tabs, you see they're numbered, and they're numbered here too. So the key assumptions, then the top-down work items, etc., when you start flowing from one to the other, how the data flows from one tab to the other. Okay. So these are the instructions. Just read through them, then you will know exactly how the data is flowing from one tab to the other, or how the subsequent tab is built on the data that you provide in the current tab. Okay. So going on to the key assumptions, as you can see, some of the basic data of the project is entered here. Okay, you need the name, the description, the requirements link, if any, then start date, end dates, and all that. And then you also look at the percentage confidence you have on the project. Based on the knowledge you have on the requirements, sometimes your estimated confidence can be 90%, sometimes it could be 50%. Right? If it is a project that is handling an enhancement on an existing application, you have a lot more confidence in what you're doing compared to a new system installation or a new tool installation. Then you need to know a lot more details technically and functionally before you can say, hey, I'm confident. So you have to put your confidence level at a different percentage. And then you can see, you can enter your risks and outstanding issues, anything on the project, any contingency assumptions. Mostly, as you can see, the BCCT, the business case document, do capture most of this information. You can just copy and paste them, or if you find anything that is more specific to the cost estimation perspective, you can use this tab. From this, it flows down to the next level, which is called the top-down work items. So like I said, the vanilla version does not give you any backup in terms of the work items. There are no reference or the tables that support for you in terms of the best possible efforts in the market, or what are the items that are generally considered for various projects, etc. So this cost estimator tool has been provided with backup material collected out of the best practices in the market when utility-based software projects or infrastructure projects are executed, how the work items are being used, or what work items are used, and how much approximately the effort time that goes into doing those things. So as you can see, some of these solution attributes are like you get custom coded application new. What does the definition mean? 7+ screens developed in an unfamiliar technology for discrete group users. So this gives you a little bit of picture that you are working on a front-end tool which is having 7 screens to be developed with an unknown technology, like either it could be a cloud technology or a SaaS technology that you are going to adopt, but you're not clearly familiar with it. So in that situation, you use this one and then put the number of such work items that you're talking, maybe 2, 3, 4, depending on the business requirement. So you can see an extensive list of these work items that you can capture, put the counts. So once this happens, what happens, this flows into the next level. Once you are done with this count, use the copy inventory. So that automatically moves you into the third tab, the number 3 tab, which brings all these inventories, multiplies with the work effort that has been captured in the backend from the best practices from the market, and that populates in the worksheet here. Okay, so as you can see, the work type is copied from their description and the work item name, the complexity. Now, we want to bring in a little bit more difficulty or parameters into the calculations. We want to understand how complex is this? Is it a new or a modified? And how the count plus complexity confidence. So all these explanations are given over here and also in the FAQs. So you can go and read them and just know for your reference, number of units, baseline units. The color coding, as you can see, there are different color codings that you see on the screens. One is you have the color screen here. The blue color is the one that you will be entering. And the pinkish color ones are the ones that are either captured or brought in. Okay. So based on this, what happens is it calculates the total number of days, days per units, and also the percentage total. So it calculates the effort here based on the work items that you have entered in the tab 2, okay, the top-down work items. This information, once it is added, you can clear the inventory. If you feel that this is not the one that I want to work with, you can clear the inventory, you can recreate the inventory and come back, or you can modify them, add more line items over here. Once this work efforts is calculated, this is workforce related, okay? This is a direct workforce effort. Then when it goes into the next tab, which is called the non-workforce related, that means you're talking about materials, like you're buying 10 servers, and then you're talking about some of the licensing cost, some of the travel expenses, right, which are non-workforce related. They are not direct contributors to the cost in terms of doing a task, but they are required in order to see that the project is executed. So this is what basically we call it as a non-workforce related miscellaneous types of expenditure. So you have to capture those things as lump sum amounts. So unfortunately, there is no way we can calculate or even make a list of the non-workforce related items. So you can use it directly, enter the description. What are the non-workforce items? You can just say software, hardware, travel, facilities, and shipping and taxes, and then put the cost. What is the percentage of the total? You can calculate and then put the comments in case you want to put some comments. After this goes into project complexity. So we want to understand component-wise complexity, component-wise risk, and then now we go to the project level complexity. So we want to understand, is it a BPU related, is it a NERC, or is it a cybersecurity related project that thereby there is a heavy complexity involved in it, or is it related to some sort of a complex environment like OMS, outage management system, or GIS, or anything that is going to be extremely complex to handle with. So in that sort of situation, we may like to remodify the figures that we have entered till now. So this is the stage where you can enter that complexity value. If it is, you see the selection here, you can select either a simple, medium, complex, and it will be having the percentage impact. So automatically you will see the data once it is entered, it takes care of that. There is a potential way that is going to be suggested first for you. You see the suggested figures here. You can override them by entering the percentages. Okay. So this is like a override to 100%. Automatically, these calculations become 100%. You got different sections here. The change management section, service introduction, technical architecture. So these components that are of a project can be of different complexity. As you can see now, right, we go into the component level complexity to the phase level complexity, okay, the stage level complexity, and then we are going to go to the project level complexity. So this is how the whole data calculation happens. And once this complexity has been decided, then go into the project effort summary. the cost estimator tool is going to throw you two components. One is the effort and the other is the cost, to handle this project. So the effort is required for your resource planning. How many resources are required from various teams. So one of the projects right now, we are finding it difficult to get our infrastructure team members because they are fully loaded with other projects. So once this sort of an estimation is given way ahead of time, it gives the other teams to prepare their resources and make them available for your project. So this is where the effort comes into picture. It comes in by days into hours, and you can see the project total estimate, the workforce related one, contingency that you want to put on top of it. And again, the percentages. You see these recommended percentages, 5, 5, so and so, based on the different phases, but you can overwrite it. That automatically calculates the other figures. You can see that the adjusted figures comes over here by phase, the number of hours and days. Anyway, days is nothing but divided by 8, as you can see. So most of these formulae and the macros built are readable and they can understand quickly. So this is the effort tab, okay? Once the effort tab is filled in, then you are going to convert that into cost tab. How do you do the cost tab here is, certain costs are flowing directly, right? The non-workforce related cost is directly flowing because there is no way we can calculate it. You are giving a lump sum figure, that lump sum figure populates this tab. If you are having a labor related one, then based on the role you have selected, the labor cost that is built as one of the backend tabs, that will kick in. So if you're asking for a 40 hours of a network engineer, so the network engineer is calculated at around $80 or $90 an hour. So that multiplies the number of hours that you require and gets populated over this tab. So that's how you will be seeing all these calculations happen as soon as you are done with these workforce related roles, and the roles multiplied by the number of hours multiplied by the cost built in. How do we get this cost is based on our SAP preloaded labor costs. Okay, we have the preloaded approved labor costs in SAP that we pick it up from there, and then we loaded the data here. Number two, for Long Island projects, if anybody is handling Long Island projects, there is a 7.5% additional cost that is loaded on the labor cost. All these are calculated, they are provided to you, so you don't have to worry about all these backend the reference data. That is all there. And we will be maintaining from the EPMO perspective to cross-check these cost figures once in a while to see if anything has changed. Then we would adjust the reference data accordingly. Okay. Then this is the output summary that you see, basically that populate the work items. It automatically brings in the effort and the confidence, etc. So this is like a summary sheet that can be presented to your stakeholders, saying that this is the requirement that you have given us. Here is the summary sheet containing this much of cost and this much of effort, and an overall picture of the complexity or the factors that you have brought in. Okay. And moving on, there are certain reference tabs that you can always look at and understand that these points are like, for example, this tab is worked item and the complexity help. Every tab you can see when the complexity means what exactly is that and how that factors into the calculations. This is the hours per unit. Like I said, from the best practices, we picked up the basic bottom-up work items, which you have entered in the tab 2. And these are the number of hours by phase that are required. So this gets rolled up after you identify the work items, that kicks into this area, and then it picks up the PM and the application, whoever is the role that is required, then it calculates the total work effort that is required here. Third one, like I said, there is a reference table that was brought in for the roles and the rates. This is the roles and rates that has been brought in from SAP. You can see the director is responsible for those activity types, and these are the costs that are involved in that. This is purely for referential purpose, and it is a confidential data. So better be discreet that when you're using the data, you don't not try to publicize it around. So these are very confidential data, and just keep it for yourself while estimating the cost of a project. This tab is for the FAQs, and then you have the change history. In case you are using this sheet and multiple phases or multiple refinements that are going to do, better use the revision history. You remember that at each stage, you are going to refine your cost estimate. Now, as you become mature in your solution design and then how you are implementing things, you want to refine your cost estimate so that you can come up with either a justification document or the scorecard that you say that, okay, I'm good with all these deliverables. I have refined my cost estimates. I'm good. I don't need additional dollars. Excellent. Keep moving on. If you need additional dollars based on the scope of the work that has come to a design stage, you understand now the design better, then you need to put a justification document that automatically brings in the cost estimator tool. So this may be helping you at that level. Okay. So this is an overview. I know that I have very quickly rushed through the tabs, but help is always with you. In case you need to work on this cost estimator based on the project that you're handling, you can work with one of our team members, and then you reach out to us. We will deploy one of the team members who will work with you. Maybe you'll have a working session with them to populate some of these tabs, and then you should be good to go. Any questions on this cost estimator tool? I know this is quite exhaustive tool, but it is a very effective tool for the formal gated projects. And our senior leadership team is looking for base documents. Okay, they just don't want figures to be thrown at and not complied with later. So be careful as project manager. You work towards your cost estimates, effort estimates, your risk calculations or risk profile, and coming up with the proper artifacts based on the guidelines that you receive from the SGP framework. Okay. So that's where we conclude the cost estimation. If any questions, you're always there. I know you can reach out to us. We can explain to you. Otherwise, we'll just go to the next module. Record retention.
This is very detailed, and thanks so much, Ashley. I've not seen any such detailed cost estimate tools before. But also one question, for example, if there's any budget variance, while going through project, right? And from a central governance perspective, you keep saying that this project is kind of derailing from the budget. So ITPMO will jump in and do the course correction. It's up to the PM to basically make sure that he tracks everything by himself as a responsibility as he's supposed to.
So there are two things, right? Any project, maybe we'll take 2 minutes to explain. So there are two variations that can happen, either the schedule or the cost.
Right.
So in both the situations, you have help in terms of the scheduler and the controller. Okay, those guys are the ones who are supposed to maintain the dates and the budgets. So if they find any time that you are consuming the dollars at a much faster rate than what you should be, or you're exhausting your dollars and you need more dollars based on the scope that has increased, or certain other parameters that hit you, like a storm has hit, and for 1 month everything is out and the whole project got delayed by 1 month or 2 months, you need to incorporate additional cost into it. So such things, once you identify, they identify, or you identify, it is a team meeting. Okay, together you come up with why this has happened and what is that we have to do. Justification document is the way to go. Okay.
Right.
So you prepare the justification document, get it reviewed properly with your group product manager, and socialize it with your senior leadership team, the directors or the presidents or vice presidents, and then get the okay from the stakeholders, that is your line of business. If it is a client project, if it is IT, naturally the CIO has to say okay, and then adjust the dates. So as you know, the ServiceNow is our system of record for both dates and the funds. So you will, based on the justification document data that you enter in ServiceNow, once it is approved, system should automatically recalibrate your project. Okay, it changes the dates, it changes your dollar figures. If not, then either you can reach out to us or to the ServiceNow team. They will be able to guide you to put a ticket and they will make the changes.
Got it. Sounds good. Thanks, Norm.
Good. Okay, so without wasting any more time, let's jump to the next module. So I think it is record retention, right? So you want to bring it up, Salita?
Sure, Naren, I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so let me take this record retention. So there was an audit conducted for Long Island in order to check what type of record retention policies and procedures we follow when we execute a project, right? So the steps and the subsections that we are going to talk here is, first of all, I'll briefly go through what was the audit, and then what were the retention criteria that needed to be taken care, and how this has been brought into SGP, right? SGP is our framework to go, correct? Irrespective of what type of project it is. So when we're executing the project during its life cycle, what happens to the templates that we are consuming, and how the RRC has affected those SGP templates. And it did or it did not. So I'm going to bring it that clarity. And what are the next steps? So I'll just briefly go through those things. Next slide. So as I told you that there was an audit conducted for Long Island record retention. And during that period, that internal audit team found that there are not many stringent steps that we have taken. And also the record retention was not discussed during the life cycle of a project. That means the project is addressing all sorts of business requirements and the security requirements, etc. But at the end of the project, whatever records are generated out of the project, how are they being retained? How many years they are being retained, and how they are either archived at the end of the period or destroyed. So there is a clear guideline from PSEG enterprise-wide RMG, which is a record management group. And unfortunately, that piece was missing. So internal audit team has observed that and made an action item that IT, as the application support team, that's us, need to come up with an action plan to address the observation. So the observation is basically that for the records that are generated out of projects, there should follow the schedule and the guidelines and clearly address them during the execution of the project. So let me give an example here, right? Easy to understand. Suppose you are executing a project where you are generating a financial report for your end user. So the financial report automatically falls into a category called financial documents in the RMG guidelines. And there is a set of guidelines that are there that it should be either retained for 3 years or 7 years. Just take an example that it should be retained for 7 years. So now RMG wants to know how this has been addressed in the project execution piece. Did you discuss properly with your business to understand the requirements? Did you get the owner identified who will make a call when to archive or destroy the records? And did the project team come up with a design or a solution that incorporates the record retention criteria? And how this is finally vetted and validated at the end before the project goes into live. And the last one is, how is this communicated to RMG to keep an alert on these records? Let's say you have gone live on 12/31/2022, a 7 years period, and coming to 12/20, after the end of the 7 years, how things are going to be executed, whether they will be archived or they will be destroyed, who will be responsible for that, etc. So we went into the guidelines, we read through the guidelines, and then finally we identified certain criteria. So the next slide gives you the record retention criteria. See, the second column basically tells you the criteria that we need to address as a project team during the execution of the project. So like, for example, what are the records that are being generated? Whether the records are structured or unstructured. The explanations are on the right side, you can always read it. I'll take one example of that. Identify the owner of the record. So if the owner of the record for a structured data means the application owner, a structured definition is that the data or the records are stored on the system. Okay, either it is stored in SAP or it is stored in ServiceNow or any other tool that is called structured data. For structured data, the owner is generally the application owner and the team that generally handles those applications. We call them as products, right? So if it is an unstructured data, that the record is stored on a SharePoint or it is stored in cloud or it's stored on your desktop, then the unstructured data owner will be the end consumer and his department. So that means when I'm picking up a project, in the way beginning and the discussions during with the business, you have to bring in this record retention as one of the requirements. You should start asking the business people, hey guys, with this requirement, we are going to generate two to three reports. Where are you going to store them? If you are going to store it on a system, then this is how you should be doing. If it is stored on your desktop or on a SharePoint or in a shared folder, then this is what it is. And to store that, this may be the cost that is associated with it. Like say, for example, you're storing on cloud, gigabits of data that if you're storing has to be charged. So you have to inform them that that has to be built into your cost. You remember that non-workforce items that I was talking in the cost estimator tool? That's where you will put in this as a line item. Okay, you can say that record retention criteria requirement requires 5 gigabits or 100 gigabits of data to be stored by the end of every quarter, 4 times that. This is the cost, and that's how you calculate that. Okay, so having identified this record retention criteria, we went back to the RMG team, had discussion with them. We socialized these criteria, found that these are good to go. Now the next step, what is that? How do we incorporate it into the templates? So the next, we analyze the SGP templates. What are all the templates that we use when a project is being executed? So the next slide tells you about the templates that needed updates. Can you switch next slide, please? So not this one, previous one. Yep. So as you can see, there are 9 templates that we felt from our analysis that needed updates. They become directly relevant for the record retention criteria. And we incorporated those criteria at the appropriate sections in those templates. As PM, you don't have to do anything except look at the template and follow the template. If there is a section that is addressing record retention, make a clear attention to it, okay? Attend to it, don't skip it, because that is one of the requirements now from the audit perspective. And there are certain criteria that will be asking multiple questions to the business. There are certain templates that will just have one line. Like I said, in the cost estimator tool, you'll have only one line representing the non-workforce related cost for record retention. But there are certain other templates that will be having a little bit of subject to type thing that you have to write detailed descriptions of what the solution you have done and whom you are informing, how these are stored, etc., etc. Okay. The bottom line is that you download the template always from the SharePoint or from the source. Do not ever copy it from your previous document and say, hey, I'm going to just modify and use it. This is a very common mistake that PMs are doing, that they use a previous like 3 months back document and then start updating it. No, please don't do that. As was mentioned in the earlier section, that we might be updating with more and more content into these templates. So download always the latest one. The templates that are not touched with the record retention criteria are these. So don't worry about these things, just use them as it is. The previous ones, the new templates have been already uploaded. Basically, new means revised. Revised templates are already uploaded onto the SharePoint. That means when you go to the SharePoint, EPMO SharePoint, and you see those templates, they're all updated, ready to use. Okay. So the next steps for this record retention are basically that the rollout is from today. Okay, officially the new template, the revised templates are up there for projects to be used. Then if the project is an in-flight project and you have already passed some of these templates, don't worry about that. We are not expecting you to go back and do them. Look forward activity. So if you are going to design phase, look at the deliverables in the design phase, what templates you are going to use, and adopt those templates for the RRC. If you already done it, leave it. No, don't bother about modifying the previously done documents. The upcoming projects, if any projects is starting fresh, like for example, next week or the following week, you are coming up with your business case, you need to follow the new templates. Automatically, you will have the updated templates available to you. Just follow them. Okay. Those templates are available on the SharePoint site. And also if you want to go a little bit further to understand the record retention guidelines and the policies and procedures, here is a link. You can click it. It will take you to the PSEG SharePoint home, where it will be able to, on the right side, you can see the RMG guidelines. Okay. So that's a section for the record retention. Any questions? Okay, so that's good. Do we have Ayushi with us?
Yes. Hi,
Okay,
Naren.
good, Ayushi. Good. Okay,
Hey,
so I'll turn it
Narendra,
over to, yeah, go ahead.
one quick question.
Mhm.
Since these templates, the documents you are constantly updating, are you indicating any version numbers or something on the records so that we know whether we have the current one or the?
I think we are going to come in with a different concept, Satya. So
Okay.
till then, I think the best way is to just go and download it every time you want it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's one. And number two is, like I know it was mentioned earlier, that unfortunately we have two different sources to get the templates. So the sequence is, first go to the EPMO SharePoint site, find the template. If you have it, use it. If you do not have it, go to the source, the project templates link that I was showing you, then you will have the template there. Okay, one of the examples I can throw in is the SOW templates. So you won't find them on the SharePoint because we did not touch them, but we definitely have them on the source. So you can now complement these two sources for getting the templates what you want. Okay. Excellent. Then let's move on to the next module where my team member Ayushi will take on with this project status reporting. Ayushi, yours.
Yeah, thank you, Naren. So this is project status reporting and related slides that I'll go through going forward. It's mostly a refresher for everyone to understand how the project status report is getting submitted and how it's getting presented to the executive level in the project health review meetings. So it's an important status report because this information is extracted each month and shared at the executive level in the project health review meeting. And before I deep dive into the details of how is the overall flow chart, how it works, and how you have to submit the status report, there are key things that I want to highlight and that we have been doing even in the meeting forums as well as in these training sessions. One is the transparency. So this status reporting is a way for the team, for the project team to communicate with the leadership, to bring attention to what is going good and what is going wrong with the project. So any help that you need with the SLT or from the leadership, you can highlight. So transparency is the key. If a project is yellow and it turns to red, that means that you have done the due diligence, you are monitoring it, and you are giving a right status at the right time. But let's say your project is going green and suddenly you see that you have overrun the budget and you turn it to red suddenly. So that is what which is not acceptable, because that is means that there is some transparency, there are some issues that we are trying to hide. So be as transparent as possible. The second thing is the data quality. Please, it's a humble request from the PMO team to maintain the data quality in ServiceNow We use all the data, key data points, your financials, your dates for a lot of reporting, and there are issues when the data is not matching with what you say that is the right information. So please maintain the data quality in ServiceNow. Be as transparent as possible. And sometimes, the project turning yellow or red is not in the hands of the PM or the project team. There are external factors like resource issue or, some conflicts with other projects that you have to resolve, or, dependencies with other teams. So it's not a reflection on you. If you are giving a transparent report, it is actually a good thing. So those are some key things that I wanted to say before I'll talk about what are the guidance for project status reports, how do we submit it, and I'll also show in the test environment how to go in the system and submit a report. This flow chart is just a high level. It is saying that every week on Thursdays you should meet with your scheduler and controller to understand that how well the project is going. Is the schedule as expected? Are you seeing any deviations? And same with the cost. So this is just a guideline. Being a PM, you will be anyways more aware about what is going on in the project. Once you have that information through this meeting or through any other, you're working with day-to-day basis with your project teams, you have to submit your status report every first and third Friday of the month. And you will see reminders from IT PMO team reminding you to please submit your report on first and third Friday by the end of the day. And again, this is a request that please submit it timely, because especially the report that is due on the first Friday of the month, because we extract the information on the following Monday and we analyze the information, we do the prep meetings, and then present that information to the final project health review, which happens generally on the third Thursday of the month. So please give details and I'll go over what are the fields that we are looking for the team to fill up. But be transparent, maintain the data quality, and please fill the information on time. That is first and third Friday of the month. You can go to the process link given here for any details that you want to see. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a high-level workflow of how you access ServiceNow and how you go into different tabs and submit your status report. So I will share my screen now, and in test environment, I'll show how to do that real quick. This is actually a better way of showing what actually happens instead of going through all these slides, which makes it look very complicated, but it is not. It is a simple steps that you need to follow. Now I hope everyone is able to see my screen. I am in ServiceNow test now. There are a couple of ways to reach to your status report. The slides, they mention that if you write project status report here, you will be able to see all your project status report. And there you go. This is the link which will show all the status reports that you have for your respective projects. Since I am not a PM, I go from projects. I go to all active projects, and let's say I have selected this project. I go inside this project, and then again, there are two ways to submit the status report. You can go from here. There's a link. And this shows status reports in a different way. It's like a report layout. And then there is a tab for status reports. So here, you see these are all the status reports that were submitted for this particular project, 114. I go inside any status report. Now here I have an option to insert a new status report, right? And then this creates a copy of the current record. Okay. The other option is bear with me when I do that. Other option is you can create a new status report from here as well. Okay, so let's say I go here and I do insert. Okay, for some reason this did not work. Let me try again. Okay, that is maybe because I'm in test environment. So okay, let me try to go from the other way. So this is a new button where I go. Now this is your fields that will be auto-populated here. So you see description, name, date, and the status. They are all coming by itself. This is the date when I'm trying to submit my status report. Right now the status is pending. Now here, last week achievements. This is a section that we recently started to add in our PHR project health review meetings. We expect the PMs to enter a crisp and concise achievement that they did in the last week. So it need not be a big, huge text that we have been seeing recently for some projects. It's like a lot of information. It needs to be crisp and concise so that because basically it's just covering a week or two of information. So your next status report can give us information for the next week that you worked on. So keep it crisp, concise, maybe 3-4 bullet points are enough. Then you go to these tabs. So first 4 tabs, you have to just verify the information, make sure everything is correct, because there are these all key data points are getting populated on the project health review tab, dashboard or the deck. So make sure your state, phase, SGP stage, and everything is correct in your project form, because this is getting populated here, right? Your dates should be right. Like for example, not sure why it's showing red. It's in test environment, maybe that's why. But check your date, especially your committed delivery date. This is when you're supposed to deliver your project. Check your start date. Planned end and planned start, we show planned end date, but what we calculate and what we adhere to is your committed delivery date. Same with the financials. Make sure your actuals, your EAC, your forecast, and your total approved budget is current is showing right here. Okay, this is again getting populated from your underlined screen. Now here goes your status report. So you have to fill the individual indicators first: schedule, cost, resources, scope. So, and there are certain guidelines on how to do that. So for example, you see that everything, if everything is going well, so that's by default, right? Your project schedule, cost, resource, all those indicators will be green. But let's say your schedule is impacted, and you see that there is a 50% chance that any issue, any risk is gonna impact your project, which will change your timeline. So you have to make the indicator as yellow, and this is how you'll make it yellow. And you have to give bulleted points on why it is yellow. If you see that there is an issue already, that risk has turned into an issue, and you anticipate that you would need a change request to modify the project schedule, change the committed delivery date, you have to make it as red. And when, especially for projects that are red on any of these indicators, you have to mention why, right? Why your project is in red status, and what are your mitigation plans. So we are not looking only for the reason why it happened. We are making sure that everybody in the project team is thinking through, and they know that, okay, these are the next steps that we have found out that will help us to go back on track again, that will make us green. So we expect what are the next steps, and especially for red projects, again, what we are looking for is, do you need any help from SLT? So that's a new section that we have been adding to project health review starting from January. We want to know, or actually the leadership wants to know, that is there anything they can do to help your project, to expedite your project, or to give you the right funding. So all this information is needed for red projects. Yellow, definitely we need half of this information. We don't need what help you need, but in case you have something that you want to highlight to the leadership, you're most welcome to enter it here. So the same guidelines are for each indicator. If everything is good, you are green definitely. If you see there is 50% chance that the project is going to be impacted in cost or resources or scope, you have to make it yellow. You have to give the reason why it turned yellow. And if you have seen that there is an issue that has, it's there's no way you can be complied to your timeline or your overall budget, you have to make it as red. Same goes with resources and scope. Now, make sure that when any of the indicator is either yellow, your overall status should be yellow. If any of the indicator here is red, you have to make sure that your overall is red. We have seen in the past that, individual indicators are yellow or red, but overall is green, which is not acceptable. So in that case, we'll ask you to update the status report. Now, with that said, we are designing PTS, keeping all these things in mind, and a lot of information will be auto-populated in the PTS form. Even the indicators, at least the overall indicator, will be auto-correct, auto-check, taking the color. So you don't have to worry about if the individuals are yellow or red, then overall automatically it will turn yellow or red. You see executive summary. Maybe if you have any of the indicators red or yellow, maybe you can highlight the reason and ask from the SLT or what help you need in the executive summary section. Last week achievement, I already covered, it's the same thing. And then key activities planned. So you can take the next steps here, or you can summarize it here in the executive summary. So it's all free form text. You can add as much information, but there should be a limit, because there should be a summary to it instead of, a very, very detailed information that everybody has to read and then find out what it actually means. So once you do submit, you would see that issues and risks are showing up here, right? So here you can, I think Salita already covered this section. These two are also getting reported on the project health review deck. So make sure your issues and risks are up to date. If you have to add any information here, you can add it. You can, edit your existing issues if you see they are closed or canceled. Same with your risk. Make sure maintain the proper risk and issue status basically, and maintain the proper details about those, because those are getting reported. Those are also one of the data points on PHR. And then this goes to GPM for approval. He has to take a look to, he's also agreeing to what information is here. And then once done, you can make it like approved by GPM and save it. So this is what you have to do on a bi-weekly basis. Once you do that, we get the information, and we can go back to the deck to, kind of cover what I said and take a look. So I will stop sharing. Let me know if anybody has any questions. All right. So yeah, so if you see this flow chart, thanks, Rita. This is what it is basically telling how to go into ServiceNow, how to update all these tabs, and then save and get it approved. So we can go to the next slide. And this is again a step-by-step overview of how to go inside the system, look at your project status. And as I said, there are different ways of going to the status. You can type project status, see all your project status reports, or you can go from your projects inside the project status section. Next slide. Yeah, it's the same. This is going from status reporting section. Once you have your report, you can click on it, you can select it. Next slide, you can, so you can click on insert it will auto-populate from the past. It's highlighting the key fields like I showed, right? Or the first 4 fields, please make sure the information is right because this is getting used for the reporting purposes. The status initially will be pending and you make sure the date is right. It's reflecting the current date. Next slide. So these are the guidelines I was talking about, how to update your individual indicators, how to write the comments. It is showing you the parameters in the left corner, what does green, yellow, and red means. And once you have updated, I think the next couple of slides, and you can read through it. It's basically if you're seeing any variances in your actuals to your budget or any variances to your actual delivery, to your committed delivery, you have to take that decision accordingly, being transparent and also identifying what is the solution that you are thinking that will help. So that is the same for all those 4 tabs. So you can, in case you have to identify, right, like you need help, like what questions you need to think through before you write it, you can take help from these slides. You see in the left, they have listed down, right, the questions. Is there any scope change? What is the level of change request required? Is the scope change a showstopper? Same set of questions are there for each tab, which is, I think, which is very good reference for everyone. So next slide, please. And then again, overall status, it is an indicator of your individual project health. If anything is red or yellow, any of the indicator, overall should be red or yellow. So please do that due diligence when you are submitting the report. Next slide, please. Right. See, this I already covered the achievements and next steps. Then this is about risks and issues. Once you submit your status report, it goes to a GPM. You can say that once he has approved it, you can make it approved by GPM and then save it. So that completes the whole project status reporting and how the cycle works, how we are requesting to submit the report on 1st and 3rd Friday of each month. The next slide is about tying up the status reporting to project health review process flow. So this flow chart looks scary, but it's basically how we as a team are working on the slides, working on this information and preparing the slides for the PHR meeting. For you as a PM, you are GPM, your accountability and responsibility is to submit the status report on time with the right set of information. Then we extract mostly the first status report of each month. What we have in the second week of each month is the prep meetings, where we go over each of the status reports for all of these projects, especially red and yellow projects. And we try to clarify any questions and doubts that we have as a EPMO. So we have meetings with each product tower in the second Wednesday and Thursday of each month. That is 1 week before our final PHR meeting. And I believe everyone who is on this call has the invite for those meetings based on the tower they align to. And so please attend those prep meetings. There are sometimes a lot of questions that we have to finalize before we, a lot of questions that we have to go through basically before we have to finalize the comments and finalize the actual reason caused by the project is red or yellow and the mitigation steps. So that is what we achieve by working with you in this prep meetings. This is what the workflow is. And once we have that prep meetings done, we finalize the notes, the achievements, the next steps, help needed from SLT, all those sections, and create the final deck, which is presented in the 3rd Thursday of each month. so this is all that process flow is talking about. So next slide. These are again some guidelines or criteria that will help you on how to, arrive at your indicators, what it should be. It should be, you may sometimes need to think that, while filling in it, what are the questions that I have to ask myself to before I fill it. So these are very good criteria or questions that you can see, and then decide your comments. So this is for your reference. I will not go over it because you all will have it handy, and I mean, in this for everyone's time, we can just go to the next slide. Yeah, so it's the same. Change request is one thing I wanted to highlight. We are extracting project change request information also. I know it was not there on the status report form anywhere, but all the change requests are getting extracted and reported in project health review. So we review that number also with the teams in our prep meetings, because any delay or any budget overestimation is linked directly with the project change request. So that is what I wanted to highlight. So next slide. And then these are some other portfolio level charts or reporting that is being done and that is being shown in project health review. I think there will be more metrics and more reporting that will be coming out of the data that we have. This is just a beginning. So, and this is just to show that what are the key fields that we are reporting on. So please, as I said earlier, please maintain the information in ServiceNow. Next slide. And this is how the project health review deck looks like every month. This is what is created and presented. There is also a section. So this is how your projects will appear. And then there you see the notes section where you will see the details. And this is a little bit older snippet. We have more information now in the status notes section where we have last week achievements and help needed from SLT and all those. Yeah, that we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I think this is saying that the EPMO resources, where is the asset library where all the information is residing. If anybody has any questions, like everybody has said earlier, please feel free to reach out ITP EPMO mailbox related to this or related to any other section that was covered today. We anticipate your full cooperation, in maintaining the data. I think with that, I am good with all project status reporting and health reporting related information. Only one more thing I wanted to add is there are few more sections in the PHR project health review meeting that we do. One is retrospective or success stories. So I know most of the PMs are new on this right now on this call, but as you go along, it is a very interactive and good way to share the information with all fellow PMs on what went good and what did not go well with the project. So we are always open to have that type of success stories and retrospectives. If anybody wants to share that, let us know. Just shoot an email to ITPMO and then we will reach out back to you that this is a template. So each month it will give you some spotlight, and it will also be very, very helpful for everyone to know what the nitty-gritties of your project. With that said, I'm good. Anybody has any questions?
Great, thank you, Ayushi, for sharing project status reporting and overall health. As Ayushi mentioned, this is the IT EPMO SharePoint site where you can access all of the assets, particularly training materials such as this deck, which will the deck and the report and the recording will be posted in the asset folder. Tools and templates as well. We've talked a lot about today about templates, SGP templates being updated. You will find the updated templates in the tools and templates folder. And then playbooks and processes are reference materials for you to review the various processes, and playbooks provide step-by-step insight and information. And as we've noted, you can reach us via our office hours. We conduct office hours from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern every Thursday. It's a Zoom call. You can send us an email at the shared IT EPMO mailbox, or you can submit a ticket in ServiceNow. So again, this presentation and the recording will be made available and posted to the IT EPMO SharePoint site. The floor is open for your questions. Do we have any questions about any of the topics? Well, fantastic. We appreciate your time and your attentiveness during this training session. We offer training every Tuesday. We call it our Training Tuesdays. So we look forward to seeing you at an upcoming training event. Thanks a lot. Take care and have a great day.